Hi, and welcome to the Tales from the Trail podcast by MatchPlay. In this episode, I welcome Michael Zabala, the founder of an innovative company called Exo Armor. This company is changing how healthcare providers can help athletes quickly get back to training and competing post-injury. Michael tells a story about how 3D scanning and printing a splint at Auburn University got a star receiver back on the field to deliver outstanding performances despite a hand injury. Since then, Exo Armor has grown and provides 3D printed splints, guards, and casts for some of the best athletes in the United States, not only due to injury, but in prevention as well. Exo Armor offers these solutions in this field of sports and healthcare. Please take an extra minute to rate and review the podcast where you listen. This is a huge help. Share the podcast with whomever you think would be interested and will help in their process. Check us out on social media as well. The links can be found at matchplayrecruit.com. Yeah, let's get into how Exo Armor got its start. Is it your concept, and how did it take off?
Well, it was not on purpose, I must say. So I joined faculty in mechanical engineering here at Auburn in 2016, and a part of that process is to build a lab. And my specialty is biomechanics, so I built a big lab with motion capture cameras and sensors and all the kind of stuff you can imagine for something like that. But part of that was I purchased a 3D printer and I purchased a handheld 3D scanner. And the 3D scanner is about $30,000. So it's pretty expensive. Typically used for reverse engineering or crash reconstruction, if you can imagine scanning crumpled bumpers, for example. But my thought was I wanted to combine the 3D scanning and the 3D printing to make something like custom prosthetics. That was the kind of the general thought in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So the lab was in place as early as 2016, but it was 2019 when my neighbor at the time, who is no longer my neighbor, but he's still the head athletic trainer for Auburn football, Robbie Stewart. He called me. He knew what lab I had. He knew the work I was doing. And he said, I have a wide receiver with a broken hand. Is there anything you can do to help him? And I kind of joked that if Auburn football asks you for help, you say yes, even if you don't know how you're going to do it.
Right.
So we brought him in as Anthony Schwartz, who played for the Cleveland Browns for a while. I'm not sure he still plays there anymore, but so we brought him in. We scanned him with the $30,000 scanner, and we basically were able to extract the surface of his hand with the 3D scanner. And so from that, we made a model file that we then 3D printed.
Mm-hmm.
And this right here is a replica basically of what came off of the 3D printer, and it just basically fit around his hand like this.
Right.
And what was really cool was it's so low profile because it uses the surface of his hand that he was able to wear his glove over top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when he did that, we didn't know what he was doing for a while, but a few weeks later, I found out he was gonna finally play, and we were playing Texas A&M at College Station, and he came out on the field and nobody knew he was wearing it because he had the glove in his hand. Of course, I knew, and some of my students, my lab knew, and he took the ball. He came out in the field, took the ball for a reverse, and ran 57 yards for a touchdown.
Nice.
While he was wearing it, and it's the very first time he ever played with it. So I actually got a text from the sideline from Dr. Michael Goodlook there celebrating Auburn engineering scoring a touchdown. So that was how we got our start.
Right.
Eventually, we figured out how to do the 3D scanning on a smartphone, not a $30,000 scanner, and that's when it really opened up to the possibilities of maybe this thing can be bigger and outside of just the confines of the lab at Auburn.
Right. So what's the material that you're using?
It's just a common 3D printed plastic material, basically. It's nothing fancy. What's great about it, though, is you can 3D print with it, and it's non-toxic. If you think about melting plastic, which is essentially how this method works, you might not want that necessarily in your office, but this specific material is entirely non-toxic, so you can melt it and 3D print with it, and it doesn't cause any harm whatsoever. So it's
right.
So it works really well for our application.
Gotcha. And have you found like let's take a soccer player who maybe has a wrist injury, or maybe even the same type of look like your player had a boxer's fracture or something like that.
Yeah.
Are you finding that the officials are allowing that material to be worn? And have you found any issues with that?
It's allowed. So there's some rules based on what you can put on the body, but when it comes to injury, as long as it's covered up, as long as it's not fully exposed. So for in this case, example was the glove.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's covered up, then it's allowable in the rules of play.
Gotcha.
And so there's a lot of leeway when it comes to protecting injury, and that's basically what we're doing. It's not like um, it'd be different if you were an MMA boxer and you didn't have an injury and you put something like this on your hand, right?
Right.
Totally different thing. So yeah, so there are some basic rules,
Mm-hmm.
but generally it's absolutely legal and allowable.
Right. So walk us through like a kid goes to the doctor. I say kid because this is
Yeah,
primarily focused on youth sports and
yeah,
recruiting and that sort of thing. So the typical audience that I have are going to be high school and college kids and their
yeah.
families. So a kid gets an injury on the field and goes to the doctor. So walk us through how your process works and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, the one of the big innovations that we've done is the decision to place the 3D printer at the location of the team. So in their actual facility. And in some cases we have our 3D printer in their stadium that they actually play games in. A lot of collegiate programs are like that. And so the way it works is you'll have an athlete that's injured and they're treated by the local team medical staff, including the athletic trainers. And so uh, pretty quickly they know what the injury is, and so they can, as soon as that athlete's injured, they can take our 3D scanning app basically, and they can scan their athlete, and then a print file's generated, and it goes immediately to their 3D printer, and it prints out. And some of these print in as little as 15 minutes, especially if it's a small part. So we always kind of like to point out that in theory, and I don't know if it's happened yet, but in theory, you could get injured the first half, be scanned, and you could be back on the field in the second half of play because it's that level of turnaround of response time to get these custom fit devices put back on the athlete. So that's the sports application there. We do have other ways of getting these devices to athletes. So if you think of like a younger kid or a middle schooler, their team may not be able to have a 3D printer on site, but that's where we're able to work with these athletic trainers or these physical therapy or these other local clinics, and we can put our 3D printer in there, and the kid or the student can then go and get treated at that local facility. So like a facility that would help treat multiple high schools teams in the area.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, usually there's an orthopedic group associated with high school sports and definitely college sports. So,
Yeah,
well, in college, I guess the athletic training department would be in charge of that situation. So basically, you could use it for contusions, spraying of a joint, that sort of thing. I guess. So then you would basically create like something to cover up. Is it taken in like if there's swelling? Is it taken into account?
yeah,
What I guess because of the scanner, you're able
yeah.
to account for what the situation is, right?
Yeah, it's really convenient because like with Anthony in his broken hand, he came in first to get scanned and he had just had surgery, and it was these bones right here in his hand. I think someone
Mhm.
stepped on him with their cleat, but
Right.
he was really swollen. And so the first time we scanned him, the the brace that came out was bigger because of the surface of his hand. But as
Hmm.
his swelling would go down, they would bring him back into the lab and we'd scan him again and then make him a new one. And
Right.
so that's the benefit of this is you get the exact surface of the body. And so as the swelling is present, you can create designs for that. And then
Hmm.
as swelling goes down, by nature of the process, it's still going to fit as long as you do another rescan. So that's something that we see quite often.
Right. So yeah, I mean, what's been the experience with someone who doesn't have access to that isn't at a big Power Five university that's
Yeah.
in I don't know, Des
Yep.
Moines, Iowa. Well, that's not necessarily a good example because there's a high school kid like ha- yeah. I mean, how have you gotten the word out? How have kids found out about it and or families found out about it and that sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, as of lately, we've really put a lot of effort into building our our sales team. So this is really the first time in the history of the company that we've had people dedicated to going out and bringing our technology to the athletes and to the players. For a long time, it was primarily word of mouth because I'm an engineering professor. I've got engineering students, and we're really good at innovating and doing engineering and coming up with new products and designs. But when it comes to getting the message out in sales and marketing, that's just not something that's our area of expertise. So for a while, we were so focused on the engineering, we didn't have much of a sales and marketing effort. But that's something that as the engineering has matured and the technology has really matured to the point where it works extremely well, the entire system. Now we're finally able to actually go out and make our system known to everybody. So like I said, mostly word of mouth at first. Actually, first non-Auburn University customer of ours was West Virginia, and they found out because they read an article about the research that was happening in my lab and what we were doing for Auburn football. So really kind of a grassroots effort at first, but that's something that we're definitely trying to change right now.
Right. So you're obviously relying on the decision making of the medical professionals to decide if this is the right situation to use an exo armor, splint brace, whatever you want to call it. But so it's important I'm guessing it's important for them to have some sort of diagnosis and a scan, an x-ray or whatever it may be before they use that product, or is it kind of a stopgap until they can get there? Like if they feel like they can finish the game or that sort of thing.
So I wouldn't say they require a diagnosis because most of the time it's not medical doctors that are treating the athletes anyway. Most of the time it's athletic trainers, and so it's really an improvement on their current system. So right now they have something called orthoplast. It's a certain kind of plastic material. You got to soak in hot water, and then you can drape it over the body, and you can trim it. And it takes a long time. It takes hours of the athlete's time to do this. And they have other ways that they can fashion together devices that can respond to these injuries quickly to get the athlete back on the field. And so we're really just replacing that. And obviously we can do more long-term solutions like casts and other devices, and that's a big part of what we do. But especially for a sport like football, a lot of it is my linebacker went down with a sprained AC joint that's right here in the shoulder, and we want to get them back to be able to practice on Monday. And so let's scan their shoulder and give them an extra pad to wear under their shoulder pads, then they can play. So I actually have one. This right here is an example of one of those. So this was made for a running back at Auburn a few years ago, and they ended up just making one for each shoulder. And so he would wear these, and this is kind of a soft gel-like surface, and so this would go against his skin, and he would wear those under his pads, under his shoulder pads. Really protected his shoulders throughout the entirety of the season. So it's less of a diagnosis and more of a replacement and a better solution for what they're currently doing with their athletes.
Right. And so you could add other material to it if you had to make it more comfortable or.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this right here is it's like a ballistics gel type material. The upside is that it dissipates energy really well, and so if you're already injured, it helps prevent future additional injury. The downside is it weighs a lot. It's really heavy, and if you're an SEC running back, you can't be weighed down, right? So we have other solutions. We've frequently lined our devices with foam, and so what's really neat about that is since we have a 3D model of the device itself, we can take that to generate a file that can be sent to a laser cutter, and the laser cutter can cut out a foam liner for that device that perfectly lines up and perfectly matches with that device.
Gotcha.
And so a foam liner is going to be much more lightweight. It's going to perform a little bit better if you're looking at that.
Right. So back in the day, they used all that orthoplast, and there's all those edges that had to be filed down and kind of beveled a little bit to make sure you didn't have like a pinch point or that sort of thing. So is the material kind of workable on the edges, or does it come out printed so that it's
So we have algorithms that generate these print files, and they're designed to come out with rounded edges, like you can see
Mhm.
here.
Right.
That being said, you can still work them afterward, and a lot of the athletic trainers will do that. So it's not like it's titanium or anything. So you can go in there with shears, and you can cut edges, and you can remove parts that you don't like, and then they have other smoothing techniques that they can then manipulate it even further after that. So they
Hmm.
really, once they settle it, the athletic trainers, once they settle into the technology, they've got some pretty good ways to be able to maximize the utility of it.
Right. So, like, what's the future of this? Where, how,
Yeah.
you know, obviously this is just the beginning for you. You're 4 or 5 years into it, and so where do you see it going, and how much more sophisticated can it get, do you think?
Yeah, well, we have lots of plans for added technological sophistication. I'll put it that way. But
Yeah.
um, we see the application growing. There's a wide range of application beyond what we've already been doing in that kind of niche area of collegiate sports. Although we
Hmm.
do we do work a lot with the NFL actually, but so we do see the application of this technology growing. And one of the main things that I would like to see is not only this technology used in response to injury, so you wait till a player's injured and you put a device on them,
Hmm.
but to use it prior to injury. So to use it to augment your athletes. If you've got a running back that's running, I don't know, 30 carries a game for a 12 game, 13 game season, it makes sense that you might want to add some additional layer of personalized custom fit protection to his shoulders
Right.
because it's all about the number of carries by the end of the season, especially at the end when it matters and you're in bowl games or playoffs and whatnot.
Right.
We have methods and we have patents pending on this actually, but we have methods of attaching these shoulder guards, custom fit rib protectors, thigh pads, a few other devices to the body, essentially with compression gear clothing.
Right.
So that's I think a major push in the future is, hey, let's not wait till 2 or 3 athletes on the team get injured. Let's go ahead and outfit all 120 athletes in the team so they won't get injured. And that's something
Right.
I would like to see.
Yeah, I remember there was a big push. Geez, it's been 20 years ago now, and I think they probably still do it, where linemen are wearing knee braces prophylactically, where because there were so many catastrophic knee injuries for linemen. I'm
Yeah,
wondering
yeah,
if you're thinking along those terms, obviously with other spots, but I wonder if there's a solution for you know knees and that sort of thing. Other sports have different common injuries that you
yeah,
could address prophylactically. But yeah,
yeah. That's exactly right.
yeah. Um, so at the moment, fairly new technology. Is it cost prohibitive for just the general consumer that isn't at a Power 5 university?
Right now, the way the system works is we install a 3D printer on site, and it's a subscription model based approach. So an entire athletics department would have a subscription to our service and our system. And again, the 3D printer's on site for maximum quickest turnaround possible.
Mm-hmm.
The plan to roll it out to the public would have to be through these on-site clinics uh, because that's the way that we found the system works best is wherever you're treated or wherever you get your sports gear. Maybe it's a Dick's Sporting Goods or a place like that. But wherever the public goes to get treated or to get their sports gear, that's going to be the location where we can have the 3D scan performed and where the 3D printing can occur.
Right.
We've done some work in the past, especially we've done a lot of work with shin guards, custom fit shin guards.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've done that, and that's worked fairly well. Where the customer will scan their own shins or their child's shins, and then we make a custom pair of custom fit shin guards. We ship them to them, and so that's something that I see as a part of our future. But I think it's probably a little bit further out until we get more established in the kind of the the more mass approach of being at the location, at the point of care, that sort of thing.
Right. So, somebody has their phone, they scan in. What's is it self-guided, or do you have to be trained in how to scan? What's
So
what's the
yeah,
requirements?
the app. The app has a tutorial,
Okay.
and so you can see how to do it. Basically, it's a quick.
Mhm.
We have some tutorial videos and some images and swipe left sort of thing.
Right.
And so you can do it yourself, and you can scan your child if you're trying to make them custom fit shin guards. So
Yeah.
it's really all built into the app.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a huge market. I'm primarily soccer right now on this, and I'm sure that's you caught people's attention because I mean, soccer players hate wearing shin guards.
yeah,
I don't know how much you watch soccer, but in the big, Premier League or whatever, I mean, shin guards are like this big. It's smaller than the size of a dollar bill. They're doing what they have to do to get by. So, anything you can do to, you know, make those more wearable is important for them.
yeah. And one interesting point to make is that the Nashville Soccer Club, a few of their athletes are wearing our shin guards,
Hmm.
and one of them, Walker Zimmerman, actually wore our shin guards during the World Cup. So that was
Oh,
pretty
cool.
exciting for us to sit there and watch.
So it's the same material. Are you able? Did you put like describe what those are looking like for guys? I mean, and girls. I
Yeah.
mean, are they able to say, "Hey, Exo Armor, this is what I want in a shin guard and that sort of thing"?
Yeah, the MLS athletes were they were able to do that. We actually went up there and met with them, and we went to a game the night before, and then we met with them at their practice facility the next day, and we scanned all of them, and
Hmm.
essentially they told us exactly what they wanted, and some of them wanted these big shin guards, but most of them wanted a postage stamp kind of,
Right.
not literally, but they wanted these small, tiny little shin guards. So we made them extremely custom for them. But yeah, it depends on the athlete and what they want. But most
Right.
of them do want it small. It is the same material that we make most of our gear out of,
Hmm.
but we're able to do the custom foam liner, and we can etch their name into it with a laser. So
Cool.
that's pretty neat. So yeah,
Yeah. That's huge. I'd be curious about that to see how that kind of scales out for you.
yeah,
Yeah. So uh, talk about. I don't know if we talked about cost, but I don't think we did. So if I wanted, I don't know if you're there yet, like if you're
yeah.
in your growth, but if I wanted a custom pair of shin guards down the road, what do you predict that'll be the consumer? What will be the consumer cost for that?
Sure. Yeah. So when it comes to shin guards, you can find some super cheap shin guards. I mean, you can go on Amazon and you can find a $10 pair of shin guards.
Mm-hmm.
You can also go on and you can find $100 pair of shin guards. So it really depends on that specific athlete and that user and that customer.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, it's going to be hard for us to compete with the cheapest shin guards just because it's a unique product, right? It's made
Sure.
specifically for you, and in every instant, for every shin guard pair we've made, we've put that particular kid or that athlete's name in the foam. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
unique. So there's going to be some built-in cost there to that, but we recognize that people don't want to go and spend $200 on a pair of shin guards, and so there's kind of a good range in there that we like to be at. So generally we want to be cheaper than the most expensive ones, but we're going to have to be more expensive than the cheaper ones, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
But that's the goal, is to have it at a reachable cost, and
Right.
it's been there. It's been near the 60, 70, $75 range
Yeah.
mostly. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is achievable. It's maybe not. Uh, if you're trying to save as much money as possible, then maybe it's not for you, but it's
Right.
a reasonable price.
Yeah, I mean, it's justifiable if you're wearing them every single day, and you hate the ones that you have that you spend $100 on. Then why wouldn't
Right.
you give something for that cost a shot?
Yeah.
Um, what about like orthotics, insoles? For people who have shin splints and other different issues with their feet and lower extremities.
Yeah.
Have you delved into that at all?
Well, we haven't. So two areas that we have not really gotten into are orthotics for the soles of feet and helmets. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, well, helmets for one are it's a regulation nightmare, if you can imagine. Right? And not only that, there are other competitors in the space that are trying to do similar things that are really stalwarts in terms of helmet technology and helmet then, so we've avoided that. And then for the insoles, it's not obviously as regulated as helmets, but there tends to be a lot of players in the space that are they're attempting to do similar type technology. Definitely not exactly what we're doing. You might have seen one company, they'll send you some foam and you press your feet in the foam and then you send the foam back and then they make you custom inserts. So there are other players in that space, and so we've really avoided that for now. But I wouldn't say that it's something that we would never consider getting into in the future because it does tend to make sense. And even helmets, at some
Right.
point, it might make sense for us to wade into that with our technology.
Right.
But yeah, that's the current state.
So another thing, I was looking at your website and there was like a wrist splint that kind of had I think of like expanded metal. When I saw
Yeah,
the picture, there was like a diamond pattern in it, and it was what's the word I'm looking for? Like a screen.
mhm.
It was
Yeah, it's a lattice.
a lattice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, what's the purpose of that? How rigid is it? Even
Yeah.
like the stuff that you have there, what's the rigidity and forgiveness
Yeah.
of that stuff?
It's hard to describe it, but I mean you can kind of see it flex a little bit.
Hmm.
So it's mostly rigid, but it's not I would say extremely rigid. It's our standard print. When you see the lattice type structure for the casts, we what we do is we create the lattice structure which allows breathability,
Hmm.
but you have to thicken up the the struts, if you will, within the lattice because they can't. This is 2 millimeters thick. It's really thin, really really thin. And so if you were to take this and put a bunch of holes in it and you keep it 2 millimeters thick, now it's going to be relatively weaker.
Right.
And so what we have to do when we include the lattice structures, we have to thicken up the lattice itself. And if you think about it, if you're wearing a cast, it's not exactly something that you're probably going to go out and play a Division I college football game in. And so it's really a different application. So something like this, you want really low profile. You want to be able to wear your glove over top of it, just a shell for protection on the outside. But if you're talking about, say, you break your wrist, if an 8-year-old kid, when I was 8, I fell off a treehouse and broke my wrist. So if I went in and got a cast like what we make, that thing doesn't need to come off, and I don't need to be playing sports while I'm wearing it. And so it's really
Right.
a different application. So it is a lot more rigid, the lattice type structure, the cast
Huh.
type structure,
Hmm.
just
How
by
thick do
nature
you,
of the design itself, not the material.
right? How thick do you like relative to the 2 millimeters? How much thicker is the lattice work there?
I would say probably double, probably
Okay.
double. Yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool, like where this is going, and as the cost of laser or 3D printers come down, I mean, it's going to just make it more and more.
Well,
Uh,
that's what's really incredible is 3D printing technology cost has just plummeted, and it continues to go down. And this one right here is this is just an example.
mhm.
And I would not suggest using this in a professional setting, but this was done on a $300 3D printer.
Wow.
The 3D printer itself was $300. Now,
Yeah.
it came from overseas. You got to put it together yourself. It doesn't have a enclosure. It
Right.
breaks all the time.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But the point is the technology is really it's come a long way, and it's always getting faster. It's
Hmm.
always getting cheaper,
Yeah.
and the applications are growing, and so it's hard to keep up with, and that's part of what we do is keep up with it, and it's hard to keep up with.
Right. Right.
But I will say that the benefit that we have, whereas we're not a 3D printer company, we don't make 3D printers, and so the benefit to us is we can pivot extremely quickly to new printers that come out on the market because we're not married to a single manufacturer of 3D printers.
Right.
And so
Right.
we've gone through some different manufacturers of 3D printers because the newest thing's always coming out, and we're able to snap it up and incorporate it into our solution.
Yeah. What's the role of artificial intelligence in this? Is there any role or?
I think there is when it comes to model file generation. So we actually do a lot of machine learning in my lab, and machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. And basically, the way that works is you feed the computer a lot of data that is known. For example, you feed the computer a bunch of pictures of your family, 1,000
Mhm.
pictures of your family, and you train the algorithm on that. And then what you do is you send it a new picture of your family, and you just ask a question: is this my family? And it's probably going to be able to say yes, because you've
Right.
trained it on what to look for. And so I see a lot of the same thing with this application, because we do a lot of AC pads, we do a lot of wrist splints, we do a lot of shin guards, we do a lot of these devices that are custom fit, but they're standard devices. And so that's where machine learning can come in, where you can take a 3D scan of someone's arm and then just simply say, make me a cast.
Right.
And it can do that immediately and then send it to the 3D printer. And so that's where I see machine learning coming into play here, is automating our processes, learning from our processes, and just making it more efficient and faster and just a quicker turnaround.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like some of the demands of, the athletes that this is good for, speed is important. Especially, at the moment of injury, or, if they're in the middle of a game, like you said, in a second quarter, and they want to be out there after halftime, but also, as they're recovering and swelling's going down, to be able to take care of it really quickly is vital.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that, especially at the collegiate level, especially high level, conference level, SEC level play, these athletes, they don't have a lot of time.
Right.
If you look at D1 athletes across the country, they just don't have a lot of time. They don't have any time.
Right.
In the traditional processes with the orthoplast and other techniques, the athlete had to be in the training room for, could be hours.
Right.
With our process, it takes literally 5 seconds to scan the athlete, and then they go. And then it's 3D printed, and then they lose it. That's fine. You just press reprint.
Right.
And so it really saves a lot of time for the athletes, which is a win for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that orthoplast stuff, I mean, put it on, you reshape it, you have to reheat it and you got a heat gun. Sometimes it's a pain in the butt. So this is a much better solution. So what else, what am I missing, and what haven't I asked you that would be important for you to get out to people, and that sort of thing?
Well, we do have a website. If you're just curious and just want to learn about what we're doing, it's xoarmortech.com. We have a YouTube page. So we have a few clips up there that you might find interesting. I did an interview on the Auburn pregame radio show a couple of years ago that's posted up there, and we talk about this specific application for Auburn, a little bit more of the backstory. So if you're just generally curious, you can go and learn about us. And if you're interested in our system and how to get access to our system, we do have people that respond to the messages that you send on the website. We're not a big company. It doesn't go get shipped. Your message doesn't get shipped off somewhere and it's processed. And it's we're very small, or I wouldn't say very small. We're a smallish company right now. We've only been around for four years, so we do have a pretty good turnaround time and that sort of thing. So we're available, and I guess that's the main thing I want to communicate.
Cool. Yeah, I will definitely include all of your information when I post this podcast, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's such a cool company and innovative, and I mean, it's important in athletics. So to be able to have such a quick turnaround time and get away from the old ways of doing things. So it's really cool. And thank you for coming on and spending a little time with me this morning. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. It was fun.
All right, I hit stop.
All right.